Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Jamin Hadfield, and as always, I'm joined by Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Hey.
And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Always a pleasure, Damon.
Always a pleasure for you both, for me to see you both. And today we're discussing the question, where is the PlayStation 5 Pro? It's long been rumored. Specs have allegedly leaked, and if we're looking back at PlayStation's history, this is about the time in the generation when they do release a mid-gen refresh, and yet we're left John Travolta gift wondering, where is PlayStation 5 Pro? So bear with me, I have a bit of a preamble here, and then I'll bring in Max and Ryan for their thoughts. In February of this year, analysts reported that they anticipate Sony will release a PlayStation 5 Pro in the latter half of 2024. We are in the latter half of 2024 right now. Looking back at the history of when they've released mid-gen refreshes, PlayStation 2 was out in 2000, the PS2 Slim was out in 2004, PS3 is 2006, the PS3 Slim was 2009, PS4 was 2013, and the PS4 Slim and Pro were both out in 2016. PlayStation 5 will turn 4 this November. Then, of course, there's the important detail that Grand Theft Auto 6 is expected next year. By all accounts, that could be a game that could really push the current gen systems, and maybe, that could be a real selling point for Sony and why people might want to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro so that they can play GTA 6 with the highest settings. Sony has also said that the PS5 is already in the latter stage of its life cycle. And in April of this year, sources told The Verge that developers are being asked to optimize their games for the new console, and that improved ray tracing is a significant focus. Now, of course, Sony recently held their summer State of Play. That would have been a great time to announce the PlayStation 5 Pro, although it failed to do so. It also failed to announce that many big games in its beloved franchises. I'm excited for Astrobot. It's not quite the same thing as Ghost of Tsushima 2 or something from Santa Monica or Naughty Dog. So, all that said, Sony is in an interesting position where it is comfortably beating its competition, but without any big games announced that are coming, really big games, and no new hardware announced, it's a little bit hard to be excited about the PlayStation 5 right now. Max, do you think the PS5 Pro is coming, and if so, when?
I do think it's coming. I think it's going to happen eventually. We fall into this trap of thinking that Sony is going to announce things in the sort of the shape of the thing that used to be E3, that sort of summer window. We're very used to that being the time of the year when big announcements get made. But if you look at Sony's recent track record, even going back to when E3 was still happening, they weren't really using that time slot to make huge announcements that often. And I guess the PS5 got sort of a hardware reveal that took place in June, but we didn't get an MSRP or a release date until September. And then the same was true of the PlayStation VR got kind of officially revealed. They announced its existence. They said it was in the works around CES of 2021. And we didn't know what the actual deal was on that thing until November, and then it came out in February. Looking at the PS4 Pro, that got shown off. I think they alluded to a PlayStation 4 Neo was the working title, the sort of code name they had at the time, and that got revealed in September, ahead of a November release window. So I really do think that there's less of a roadmap for a half measure console like this than we might expect. Yeah, I don't know. If it's coming later this year, I feel like we're going to see it in September. And if it's coming maybe early next year, November seems safe. I do think these things kind of line up with the, earnings reports and quarterly financial summaries, that sort of thing. But at the same time, Sony's been, they've been fairly playing things close to the chest. They've been very quiet, and that applies to the first party video game titles that they presumably have in the works. But they also, we got scolded on Beyond for referring to Sony's big summer showcase as a state of play, which is the sort of state of play is the smaller scale announcement, consumer direct type thing. And we called it a state of play, and everyone said, no, it's going to be a showcase. It's going to be a big, huge showcase. And then sure enough, it was just a state of play. And I think we all pretty much agree here that Sony had probably the weakest showing of the big three during this summer events season, whatever you want to call it. So I'm hoping that we get a big thing in September, whether that's a look ahead at what's coming next year with the announcement of the PS5 Pro. Even if it's just a standalone thing where they say, hey, great news, the PS5 Pro is coming along. Here's a look at how much prettier your favorite games will look on this new machine, and keep an eye out for GTA 6 next year. Pre-order today. It's underwhelming, but it's also, again, it's a half measure. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. We're all trying to figure out exactly what the selling point of this thing is, aside from GTA 6. But yeah, I think Sony's within their rights to not be, banging the hype drum too hard with this whole thing.
Now, Ryan, Xbox also has some expected hardware that might be considered MIA, but first, what's your thoughts on the PlayStation 5 Pro? Is it coming, and maybe when?
Well, I'll tell you, I'd started to doubt it, which was sort of the genesis of when the three of us were talking about our topic for this week's episode. And until you and Max went and looked up the actual history on the PS4 Pro, and it's like, oh, they didn't actually announce that thing until September of 2016. And so, okay, yeah, I guess even though it feels like it should have been announced by now, historically, there's not a comp for that it would actually be still in about 2 more months from now. And so I guess that's, the past precedent is what we can look to for now. I personally don't see Sony doing a standalone live stream showcase, whatever you want to call it, for this console, because it just seems like it's going to kind of turbocharge things a little bit in terms of the ray tracing, but that's probably not going to come across super well on a stream, to the point where I just don't see them doing a dedicated, 15 to 20, 25, whatever minute long showcase state of play just to reveal the PS5 Pro. I think it would probably be more likely that it would be on the back of a larger traditional PlayStation showcase with a bunch of other games. Maybe we get a new Wolverine trailer or something else from one of the other first parties, and also the PS5 Pro would be in there as part of that. That's what I personally think is the more likely scenario here.
Now, Ryan, whatever happened to Xbox Brooklyn? Codename Brooklyn.
It's coming out. It's the we've got the white console, which is the Series X digital for $50 less, for $450, and that one's discless. So that's it. There is also
the Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah, there is the disc version with the 2 terabyte in the Galaxy Black, I think it's called, which is $600 instead of $500. I don't see a huge market for that, but all right, sure, it's a choice. It exists. Why not? But yeah, Brooklyn is just not going to look quite as round and different as it did in those initial leaks from the FTC case, which I'm actually fine with, because I think I'm on record on, if not this show, then on Podcast Unlocked for sure. I love the design of the Series X. I love the sort of minimalist 2001 Space Odyssey monolith kind of thing they've got going on with it. And I didn't care for the rounded render of it from those FTC document leaks. So I like that they're keeping the same look.
The round thing didn't seem like a box, did it? It was more of like a jar or an urn. It just seems like the Series X is arguably the boxiest the Xbox has ever been, which I appreciate. Yeah. I always hated the GameCube for not being an actual cube. That should have been a game box. Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Well, speaking of design, the PS5 design is a little bit, people have mixed feelings about the design there. Max, do you expect the design, a PS5 Pro, to be something similar, or do you think they'll go for a radically different looking design?
I think if they want people to be excited about this, and to Ryan's point, it is pretty hard to showcase the little granular increases we're going to see in performance. They might be, substantial increases, but at the same time, it's hard to showcase them on a stream or in a YouTube video people watch on their phones. Changing the design, on the other hand, is a great way to get people talking and to very clearly separate this is a new thing. This is a new machine. It is, faster and stronger and sleeker, or what have you. I've never been wild about the PS5 design. I know some people love it. I don't hate it. I definitely don't like it. I do think a smaller silhouette, something maybe a little more conventionally designed, something that looks a little bit more in line with the previous PlayStation iterations, could be a cool way to get people interested again. The PS3 had, three redesigns in its life cycle? We had the big, huge George Foreman grill, and then the substantially smaller George Foreman grill, and then the weird little old-fashioned credit card slider, micro slim version they put out. And each one of those is enough of a departure from the previous design that there's something inherently, it makes you want to reach for your wallet even if you don't need one. It's like, it's a new thing. It's got a visual new car smell to it. Whereas you look at the the leap from the PS4 to the PS4 Pro, and they just added a layer to the ice cream sandwich, and then the slim version was just a shrunken down version, which was fine. I like that design all right, but I do think that if they want people to be paying attention to this particular announcement, it needs to be a bit more of a redesign than we just got with the unofficial slim downsize, most recent sort of
I think
version
it's
1.5
probably
of
more
PS5.
likely that it does have a very, very close family resemblance to the existing one. And the reason I say that is because, like you just mentioned, Max, the PS4 Pro just added another burger patty to the PS4 burger there, so they didn't venture too far out with that one. And then with the PS5, they had a chance to change up the design with this PS5 Slim they just did, and they didn't. So they seem to have, they're doubling down on this this strange design, which I agree I'm not a super big fan of either. So I would expect this is the design language for this generation of PlayStation, and I expect the PS5 Pro will. I'm sure it'll be a different color. Like I'll bet it's probably going to be black by default rather than white or something, something to that effect. But I'll bet it's going to have a pretty close family resemblance to the existing one.
That last redesign was a little weird though, because they didn't formally call it a Slim. It just became the new standard PS5, which was sort of a change of approach from previous iterations.
Well, hopefully the PS5 Pro isn't any bigger than the PS5 already is, because it's already difficult to incorporate into an entertainment setup. We will remain vigilant in our search for news about the PlayStation 5 Pro. You may even say that watching for new gaming hardware like that is the very point of the show that you're watching right now. Okay, we have the results of last episode's poll talking about portable handheld gaming hardware, new handheld gaming hardware. We asked, who would you want a new handheld from the most? And the winner, unsurprisingly, is Nintendo. Everybody wants that Nintendo Switch 2, but it was very close for all three. Nintendo was at just about 36% of the vote, Sony was at 32%, and then Microsoft was at 24%. And there are a lot of rumors about this Xbox handheld. Phil Spencer seems very key on it. Ryan, what do you think the odds are that we could get an announcement of an Xbox handheld sometime this year?
Oh, I think we talked about this either last week when you weren't here or the week before, but I'd say the soonest we might hear about it would be a very just minimal announcement at the Game Awards, similar to how they announced the Series X at the Game Awards in 2019, meaning, no details, no price, none of that stuff, but we might just get an official announcement and a look at it. I could see that happening at the Game Awards. Otherwise, we don't really know the timeline on this. It could be a next generation device, as I've dreamt on air about here, that it will replace the Series S as the low end version of the next generation Xbox. And if that's the case, then we probably wouldn't see it for, who knows, a couple of years from now. But if it is coming soon, then I think there's a better than average chance that we might get a nice, stylish reveal with little detail at the Game Awards.
And here's a new poll for you to vote on for next episode. When it comes to a PlayStation 5 Pro, would you buy a PS5 Pro just to be able to play Grand Theft Auto 6 on the highest settings? Yes? No? Maybe? Maybe it depends on the price. Make sure to vote at IGN.com. Ryan would. He's already voted right there. Ryan, wait! You're supposed to vote on IGN.com the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes here in our LA studio to make this episode possible. If you're here in the States with us, I hope everybody has a safe and enjoyable long holiday weekend. If you're not in the States with us, I hope you have a very safe and enjoyable weekend, and if it can be a long weekend, all the better. My name is Damon. This is Next Gen Console Watch, and we'll catch you on the next one.